Okay, thanks everyone. Welcome to our webinar for today, where we're celebrating the International Day of Clean Energy. We're just ahead of the UN schedule. They're having their celebration, I noticed on the website, at 10 a.m. today, Eastern Time. So really happy to be a part of this day, and also found the Secretary General's remarks for the day very inspiring. So I will share those later at the end for when we're having our discussion. But without further ado, would like to turn over to our colleague John Mitchell, who co-chairs the Household Energy Hub for the CCAC and is a real driving force behind all of the activities that we do. So over to you, John.
Thank you so much, Sandra. As Sandra mentioned, my name is John Mitchell. I work at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency on household energy and clean air. And it's my pleasure to welcome you today to this meeting. I want to extend greetings also from my Hub co-chair, Paula Edsey, from the Energy Commission of Ghana, who unfortunately could not be with us today. This meeting is a wonderful way to start out our new year, catching up on a number of innovative activities to advance household energy initiatives around the world. Before we get going, though, I wanted to take a moment to remind everyone about what an amazing year 2024 was for highlighting the challenge of household energy at high-level events. Language regarding the importance of working on household energy was included in negotiated texts at the G7 under Italian leadership, and again at the G20 under Brazilian leadership. Folks should know that Brazil also developed the roadmap for achieving universal access to clean cooking, which was prepared by the IEA, SE for All, and the World Bank. And then, of course, folks should be aware of the IEA's Clean Cooking Summit for Africa, hosted with the African Development Bank, Norway, and Tanzania. And hopefully we'll look back on that as a turning point for progress on ensuring clean cooking access for all by scaling up financing. A couple other things I just want to quickly highlight is people should know that the ISO standards for testing biomass stoves are in the process of being reviewed and strengthened after 5 years of implementation. This is an every 5-year schedule that ISO standards are on. There's also an opportunity as countries submit new NDCs for countries to commit to reduce emissions from household energy. And I think we'll be hearing a little bit more about NDCs this morning. Finally, the Clean Cooking and Climate Consortium is finalizing the clear methodology for cooking and carbon projects that will incorporate the latest science and data available, incentivize best practices, and bring greater transparency, integrity, and consistency to the ecosystem, all to build confidence in carbon credits so that clean cooking initiatives may take full advantage of the opportunities provided by carbon finance. CCAC is excited to be in the new phase of implementation, with countries showing off what they're doing and encouraging countries to continue to request support to take action on reducing emissions from household energy. Today, I'm excited to hear about local engagement in Puebla, national engagement in Uganda, implementation of new regulations in Ghana, and the power of communication to encourage behavior change in Eswatini. Like 2024, 2025 will be another big year for highlighting household energy on the international stage, with the CCAC annual meeting in Brasilia in March, followed by the WHO Air Quality and Health Conference the following week in Colombia, all leading up to COP30 in Brazil. So with that, welcome again, and I'll turn it back over to Sandra.
Thank you so much, John. And it's really great to also have that litany of achievements from 2024. And we're looking forward to the strong push in 2025. So our next speaker is our colleague from IRENA. Unfortunately, Caroline was not able to join us today, but she was able to make a last-minute video. Sadly, the video cuts off, but I really love what she says in the first 6 minutes and 56 seconds. So we will hear from Caroline. Caroline recently wrote a blog post on for the IRENA website on the power of the NDCs to help us tackle clean cooking. And so very sad she couldn't join us last minute, but she is here in spirit. And so thank you, Marco, for the video.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Caroline Ochieng. I'm a program officer at International Renewable Energy Agency, and I work on energy access. So let me start by thanking the organizers for recognizing Clean Cooking Challenge on this International Day of Clean Energy and for inviting me to provide opening remarks to this discussion. And since I have the first chance to speak, I'll use it to also introduce what the challenge is and really the scale and impact of lack of access to clean cooking. So we are in 2025, 5 years to the end of the SDGs, and we still have 2.1 billion people without access to clean cooking. Majority of this population, 85%, are in sub-Saharan Africa, where the problem is most severe. And its numbers can hide a lot. So I'll just outline some of the key impacts just to really provide context and for us to appreciate the scale of the challenge. So without access to clean cooking, it means this population is relying on cooking with biomass. And with the increasing population growth, there's increasing scarcity of biomass, which means the distance to reach, to walk, to find the fuel and collect it and carry it back has increased. So much more hours are being spent just on the activity of gathering cooking fuels. And with that also comes a lot of risks in terms of the heavy weight load that women carry, in terms of the time they lose that could have been productively spent on other activities, in terms of risks like violence or insect bites and injury that they're exposed to working and scavenging for fuel. And of course, when the fuel is brought home, then it has to be burnt, often on open fire. And this results in smoke, indoor air pollution, contributing to 3.1 million annual deaths, but also injuries and burns. And a lot of time and effort just managing and cleaning and all the activities related to managing this open fire compared to how it would be if you just switched on a stove and cooked. And I wanted to lead with those before talking about climate impacts, which are also important, just because so that we don't lose sight of the fact that energy access is important on its own, just the idea of people having fuel to cook, even before we look at impacts such as climate and health. But climate impacts are indeed relevant. So approximately 2% of CO2 emissions come as a result of dependence on biomass for cooking. And so compare this is equivalent to almost the emissions that arise from aviation or shipping industry, and link that to the level of effort that goes towards tackling emissions from those sectors relative to what happens when it comes to clean cooking. So the climate angle is therefore very important as well. And then all this is occurring at a time solutions actually exist for tackling the challenge. So to put it a bit in context, so in 2010, about 2.9 billion people did not have access to clean cooking. This number reduced to 2.3 billion in 2021, so in approximately 1 decade. And so as we look at how many people don't have access, it's important to also look at how many people have gained access, because then that shows us technology exists that can tackle this challenge. And also that it's not a challenge that is insurmountable. It's been done. And so there's a lot to learn from that. And with the more concerted effort, the same can happen for populations that still lack access. So there are several barriers, several reasons why we are still at 2.1 billion. But I'll just focus on one, which relates to cost. Of course, most population relying, say, on fuel would gather it for free. And the population is also poor. So the cost of switching to, say, LPG that has a recurrent fuel expenditure is very difficult, or even to afford to purchase an efficient stove. And that's where the role of climate comes in. So most of the progress witnessed in the sector to date has been as a result of climate finance that then can help lower the cost of cooking solutions and make it affordable for populations who would otherwise not be able to afford it. And so this then links to the angle around the NDCs. So there's an importance of linking clean cooking to NDCs in as far as it signals country ownership of the problem, and also it changes the narrative from this is a charity or yeah, it should be like it's a philanthropic investment, yet there's actually financial returns and other investment opportunities when it comes to clean cooking. And then countries themselves, the fact that they already see NDCs as relevant for clean cooking. So an analysis done by IRENA found 73% of countries in Africa had incorporated clean cooking in their NDCs. So this gives legitimacy to cause supporting this work, and more so considering that users themselves, of course, don't link that they are.
So colleagues, unfortunately, I mentioned at the beginning that the video was going to cut out right when she was getting into the nitty gritty here. But I do want to point your attention to Caroline's remarks on the IRENA website, which I will share. I shared in the chat, but here so you can see that she has like helped put this out in writing that might be useful for your own work. And then also another piece of information that I think I will also put the link in the chat, but that you can use in your own work is the remarks from the Secretary General with this message for International Day of Clean Energy that really also highlight the NDCs as an opportunity to scale up solutions in this sector. Without further ado, I will turn over to my colleagues, Saul Peretra, the Climate Action Manager from WRI Mexico, and also his colleague Ana Cecilia Pareles, the Technical Administrator Coordinator for Air Quality at WRI Mexico. They're doing an amazing project on the ground in the state of Puebla. And guys, I will kind of let you know when you have a minute left and try to stick to the 8 minutes so we can hear from everybody and still have questions at the end. Okay, thanks all.
Thanks to you, Sandra, and all the people who is connected. It will be challenging to share all the information, but we're going to do the effort. Okay, this is a very important project for WRI Mexico because it implies the mix of two main areas: climate change and air quality. So the results that you are looking at these slides reflect that work. If you can help me with the next one. The idea is to develop a strategy in the household sector for the state of Puebla. The outline, as you can see, is quite ambitious, but we are trying to do it in time. And I'm going to pass this one, please. The next one. The context of the project is that, as you all probably know, Mexico includes black carbon in their NDC, not only the last from 2022, but since the one submitted in 2015. And the goal is to reduce 51% of black carbon by 2030 and 70 in 2030 with better conditions and technology share and more financing, etc. So as you all know, black carbon is a very important topic to struggle with in the context of climate change. And in Mexico, for example, in 2022, 700, more than 700 tons were emitted, mainly for those sources that you can see. The main one is the wood burning in homes, DC vehicles, electric power generation, and natural gas, biomass, and solid waste burners or burning activities. The graph that you can see in the down part of the slide, it's in Spanish, but we can see how how many opportunities we have in the residential and commercial sector to comply with these targets. The next one, please. And this is quite important because part of the work that we are trying to do is, okay, perhaps no, we are in this moment not working at federal or national level, but what we are trying to do is to do some working from the bottom up experiences. And these experiences are taken from this state in Mexico. We work in Cuetzalan, which is a municipality in the state of Puebla. And one of the characteristics from Puebla is that mainly is composed by Totonac and Nahuatl indigenous people. And because of that, it's important because, as you probably know, most of the people in Mexico in rural areas are indigenous. So what we can set as an example there could be helpful for expand expand the project. So in this context, it's important to say that fire and wood are not only a central part of their culture and cosmovision, but also it seems like a great or good strategy to be autonomous and sovereign energetically talking. So that's important because there is a cultural aspect to be considered, and one of the results that we are presenting is related to that. Obviously, the health and issue is an issue. Almost 75% of the population lives in poverty, and because of this poverty, most of the causes associated with deaths are related to marginalization. Sorry for the spelling. And 10% of the deaths calculated by 2021 were in Puebla related to these issues about air quality. So it's like the worst part of the context, but something interesting is that since 2002, Cuetzalan was named as a magical town. This is like a brand that the national government set to trigger the tourism in the area. And also in 2021 was elected as a best tourist village in the world. And it's like a contrast between what is shown against what is happening in the territory. So just to have in a little context. I'm running the next one, please. And basically, this is the goal is, again, from the bottom up perspective, to contribute to the NDC, to the Mexico NDC, trying to set some specific recommendations on black carbon reduction that could be reflected in a policy public instrument. Obviously, to develop this energy sector strategy for rural areas, and obviously also help to engage to generate this energy sovereignty strategy. It's founded by the CCA, implemented by us, WR Mexico, and the main beneficiary is INEC, which is the technical government part of the national authorities in the environmental sector. And I guess I'm finishing here because I know that this is very, very important and I'm consuming a lot of time. Sorry. Just in perspective, obviously cooking in Mexico, and I'm sure in other parts of the world, cooking is led by women. And in this case, it's very, very important because not only is related to the activities that they can perform, but also all the activities related to having a good for cooking. For example, the extraction, go to the field and pick of some of the goods, all the related issues on violence and insecurity. So this project try to set all these aspects related to vulnerability of women and try to set some kind of recommendations about it. But okay, I'm going to start here and I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague, Ceci. Please, Ceci.
Okay, well, thank you everyone, and thank you Saul and the CCAC for organizing this event. I guess we only have 1 minute left. So yeah, I just wanted to show you some activities that we have done in Quetzala. So Quetzalan is a community with a lot of history and experience in the defense and management of their territory against big projects. So there are several organizations working in the community on different issues related to environmental and health defense. So we met with some of them to share their experience and lessons learned about past projects that intended to provide good saving stocks, as well as the effort the community has made to transition to cleaner technologies. And we have partnered with a local indigenous and feminist organization called Tochan, and they were our eyes and ears on the ground and helped us to conduct 70 interviews with women and families to ask them about their experiences in using wood burning stoves, their cooking methods and practices, firewood collection, and their experience in using other cooking alternatives. And we also organized an event with Tochan to share with families and women in the community the benefits of using efficient wood stoves or other alternatives like gas or solar grills. And we also share some good practices to reduce the amount of firewood, and we organize a demonstration event with different types of technologies. And again, with Tochan and with our GESI team at WRI, we developed a set of recommendations for inclusive and sustainable food cooking, considering the results of the interviews on our stakeholders and also on the household interviews. And at the same time, we work with I'm just going to share this picture. And at the same time, we work with some colleagues some experts on health and air pollution to conduct a literature review of efforts in Mexico and other countries to transition to cleaner technologies and fuels. And from this literature review, we were able to make a series of recommendations to the community, and we will integrate them in the final report, and that will be presented and shared with different levels of government also. So yeah, very quickly, these are some beautiful events of some beautiful photos of our demonstration event in Quetzalan. So I guess we are out of time.
Sorry, but it's really inspiring. I think, unfortunately, there's going to be because we have so many projects, which is the good thing, people are rushed to present, but I think this gives the spirit of your project, and also just the emphasis on women and the community in developing the solution and the strategies in the the strategy to move forward connected to the NDC. So thank you so much. And we'll have a time for question at the end. So please also, if you have questions, put them in the chat. And then if we can't answer them during the call, then we will do it afterwards. And I would like to now turn to our colleague, Rob Bayless, senior scientist at the Stockholm Environment Institute, to tell us a little bit more about the work that has been going on in Uganda to develop a national clean cooking strategy. So moving from a subnational to a national strategy. Thank you so much, Cece and Saul.
Thanks, Sandra. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, and I'm going to share my screen so that
we got you.
Show slides. Great. All right. Second thumbs up that you can see the screen.
Got it.
Good. All right. So I'll jump in. Thanks to Sandra and her colleagues for giving me the opportunity to present this project. So as Sandra mentioned, we are collaborating with the government of Uganda to develop a nationally integrated clean cooking strategy. And before I launch in, I just want to acknowledge that I'm not doing this alone. Along with several other colleagues from Stockholm Environment Institute, we're also working with Berkeley Air Monitoring Group, the Clean Cooking Alliance, CCAC, which is the Center for Integrated Research and Community Development in Uganda, and of course our government partners at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in Uganda. So launching in, this project has the main objective, primary outcome, of providing the government with a coordinated, integrated national clean cooking strategy to achieve clean cooking targets with a clear process to measure and monitor the extent to which these interventions are meeting Uganda's third National Development Plan target by 2025. And these targets specifically from what we call NDP 3 are to reduce the share of biomass energy used for cooking from 88% in 2018 to 50% by 2025, and at the same time increase the share of clean energy used for cooking from 15% in 2018 to 50% by 2025. These targets raise a bunch of questions in my mind, and it should raise a bunch of questions in your mind if you follow this sector. First, 2025, that's soon, that's now. And that's the pace at which we can change. We can question that. We might also ask, what's clean in this context? And we could also ask, what's a logical pathway to achieve these targets? And the NDP, being a high-level document, doesn't include any of these details. So what's clean? It doesn't specify. What's a logical pathway? Also doesn't specify, though it drops some hints. And we'll go into some of the details about how we can flesh that out in greater detail as I go. But importantly, to circle back into the what's clean part, since it wasn't specified there's a whole international discussion around this, led largely by the WHO. And so we follow that definition. And if you're not familiar with those details, we can review during the Q&A. Okay, so to give a little context, Uganda is heavily reliant on biomass. As Caroline mentioned in her opening remarks, this is one of the countries where nearly all of the population is using biomass in some form. So the graph I'm showing now shows you trends. Let me get rid of this. Okay, I can't get rid of that, sorry. The graph I'm showing you now shows trends for the past 30 years using nationally representative data, where you can see really dominated by wood and charcoal. In the top two graphs, the range goes from 0 to 80%. However, you can also see there's been a gradual decline in wood and a gradual increase in charcoal as a primary cooking fuel. That more or less mirrors the process of urbanization in Uganda. On the lower graph, the axes are very different. They range just from 0 to 2% for LPG and electricity. And you can see there's been growth in LPG from a very low baseline of just a fraction of a percent 30 years ago to somewhere between 1 and 1.5% now. Although the most recent data just from last year's national census shows there's actually been a slight decline. So what looked like a really aggressive upward trend has hit a little bit of a road bump. It also shows that electricity is very erratic. It falls around the same range as LPG, but it's been up and down over the past decades. It has ticked up in the last data point from the 2024 census, and that might explain LPG's decline, but without further number crunching, we really can't say if there's a trade-off going on or not. But the key takeaway from this data is that in 2024, fewer than 3% of Ugandan households use clean fuels as defined by the WHO for their primary cooking tasks. So 3% as of last year. Obviously, we're not going to hit 50% this year, but let's talk about what a realistic pace of change might be. Okay, so our project, in addition to that major outcome, has four main outputs that we've been working on. And I'm going to focus just on two of them for this very brief presentation. The first that I'll focus on is to develop a clean cooking roadmap for that national strategy with fuel and technology specific guidance that includes consolidation and integration of existing policies and strategies, and the development of achievable targets both for rural and urban areas. And then we're also working on, very relevant for CCAC, estimate of greenhouse gas and short-lived climate polluting emission reductions that result from these targets. And I'll touch on both of these points very briefly. Okay, so first, what existing policies and strategies exist in Uganda? So like I mentioned earlier, the National Development Plan, it has this high-level goal, but no details. In the intervening years, since that was released in 2020, Uganda has introduced several policies and strategies that I list here. There are four, basically one for each of the major clean cooking options. And I'll just go into detail for one of them. Again, in the interest of time, I'll look at the LPG promotion, supply, and infrastructure intervention that was introduced in 2021. This has a target, long-term target of reaching LPG penetration in 30% of Ugandan households by 2030. Right now, it's about between 1 and 1.5%. So that's quite an aggressive target to try to achieve. They initiated this with a specific project to try and hand out 1 million LPG connections between 2021 and 2023, but even that stalled and wasn't achieved. So if we think about this, what has to happen? If in 2024, the national census that was recently completed indicated that 1.1% of the population, about 125,000 households, used LPG as their main cooking fuel. To reach 30% of the population by 2030, that would be 4.3 million households. Uptake in LPG needs to increase by 60% annually. That means a year-on-year 60% increase. And if you follow this sector at all, you know that is an astounding rate of growth. Okay, possibly unachievable. Imports also need to increase by about a factor of 20 to reach that level by 2030. So this is really a tall order. Looking at some of these other targets, if you add them up, all of these targets in the existing policies for these 4 main clean cooking pathways cover about 60% of households by the early 2030s, at least 40% unaccommodated by existing strategies. And if you know the SDG 7, we need universal access to stick to that objective. So in our strategy, we recommend providing the remaining 40% with transitional fuel wood and charcoal stoves. And transitional is a specific language used in the WHO's lexicon of ranking clean cooking options that we can go into details of during the Q&A if anyone is interested. Okay, so what does a transition look like? If we follow those pathways that are laid out in those existing strategies, we would go from the graph on the left, which is a business as usual graph that's completely dominated by wood and charcoal in low tier polluting stoves. There is a little bit of LPG and e-cooking there, but it's so small you can't even see it in the graph. The transition, if we follow these existing strategies, would carry out over these next 5 years, starting right now, okay, and would phase out essentially wood and charcoal in tier 0 and 2 stoves in favor of a range of these different options. LPG that I discussed in detail, e-cooking, which also has its own strategy, and then other high tier or clean cooking options, again, using the WHO's language, that could include pellets and gasifier stoves, ethanol, biogas, those 3 options basically. So those are mixed in. You can see this carrying out over 5 years is very aggressive, okay? And let's look at some of the numbers. So part of our assessment, Sandra, I see you're waving your hand. Am I out of time already? Okay.
Kind of,
so,
yeah.
All right, let me just touch on these numbers and then I'll close off. Okay, so you can see some of these numbers. We've done a financial analysis for what this might mean, and I just want to call your attention to 2 of these numbers. So in the existing strategies to achieve that 5-year transition, adding them all up across these 4 fuels requires about $140 million in investment per year. If you follow the sector, clean cooking, overall globally, the rough amount of investment comes to about $200 million. So that means Uganda would need to command the vast majority of the global investment in clean cooking to achieve this target. In addition, that doesn't even count for the cost of stoves and fuels itself, which is several multiples of that. So this money would have to come from the people, the government, some combination of the 2. Okay, call out one other number. Oops, sorry, I thought I had a little call out here too. So one other number here, the top row in the emissions reductions. If we did follow this pathway, the emissions reduction would be tremendous. We would see 450 million tons of CO2 equivalent reduced cumulatively over that 5-year period. Okay, if we put a dollar value to that, $10 a ton, say, it's easy math, that's $4.5 billion. So that's more money than is needed to cover this objective. However, carbon markets are fickle, complicated, and difficult to access, and I'll leave that not so optimistic thought there. Okay, so just for next steps, I just want to mention that we've handed over a draft of this roadmap, and we're waiting for feedback from the Ugandan government on that before we can finalize things. And then we have several other measures. to complete, including a closing workshop that we hope to hold sometime during second quarter this year. So thanks very much, and happy
Rob,
to
thank you
answer
so
questions.
much.
You bet.
We could have had I think each of these projects could be an entire webinar. And so I'm really feeling like this is a little bit of a teaser celebration of all the effort going into increasing access to clean energy. And we will follow up with longer presentations so that the attendees can get more, more involved in asking questions about these things. But that was super clear, and I think probably lessons for across the board for how people can present information in such a clear way. So thank you so much. And I am going to turn over now to our colleagues sorry, I'm just don't want to mess up the order here. Our colleagues in Ghana, who are working our colleague Gloria, who's working to build capacity to meet new regulations on biomass cook stoves in Ghana. So really just to your point. And so Gloria, thank you so much. If you are able to show your video, that'd be great. And I think, Marco, can you show Gloria's slides?
There.
Perfect. Okay, Gloria, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect.
All right. So the project was to mainly build the capacity of local manufacturers who are manufacturing cook stoves, biomass cook stoves in Ghana, to meet the new regulations set by the Energy Commission in Ghana. Next slide, please. Okay, so the overall goal of the project was to sensitize biomass cook stove manufacturers on the new regulations and its implication for current stove design challenges identified by the regional testing and knowledge centers. And then follow up with in-factory capacity building and production of stoves for subsequent evaluation to determine if these new or modified designs meet the regulation. So what has been done so far is that we have held a 6-day capacity building workshop for 40 manufacturers. And these manufacturers were identified by the Energy Commission and the Ministry of Energy and GACO. They took part in a 6-day capacity building training. And the training mostly focused on the current performance of existing biomass cook stoves in relation to the regulatory compliance, and then stove design challenges and how these challenges impact the performance of the stoves. If you move to the next slide, please. Okay. And then the principles of heat transfer in the biomass cook stoves were also covered. And then material selection for biomass cook stove design. So most of the stoves in the charcoal stoves in Ghana use ceramic liners. And these liners are sometimes so dense that they add to the mass of the stove, making it very inefficient. So the material selection was so that manufacturers would know what clay to use for the design of their liners, and then what to add to increase the porosity of these liners so that they are not so heavy for the production of the stoves. The training also covered practical sessions on the design and prototyping. So we had practical sections on concept designs where manufacturers were grouped into 4 and provided with the necessary materials to be able to do some design and have some concept ideas before actual prototyping and using the real materials to do the prototyping. From there, we moved to practical sessions on clay liner productions. And that is those who are doing liner productions, we build capacity on what kind of clay to select and what to add to the clays to make it less dense, to choose clays that have a very low thermal conductivity so that it will be able to provide the insulation that it needs for the stove. Again, there were practical sessions on welding and fabrication. If you move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the sessions on the clean liner production that was being carried out in the lab with the manufacturers who were involved in liner production. And then we move on to the next one that had practical sessions on the design and fabrication of the stoves. So the current designs that they have, we identify challenges that were associated with the current designs, and for that reason, why they were not meeting the new regulations, and then what improvements could be done to be able to meet the regulations. So they actually fabricated the stoves based on these knowledge that they currently have, so that they will improve on the design. And then we had an evaluation session where we gave different feedback on the stoves that they had produced to identify what challenges still persist with the ones that they have modified and the new designs that they have brought forward. For next steps, we were supposed to do an in-factory capacity building to determine whether the lessons that were learned in the 6 days training have made any impact in their production in the factory. So they are supposed to take these modified and new designs to the factory and produce. And these stoves are supposed to be brought back to the regional testing and knowledge centers for testing to check their compliance with the regulations. So those are the next steps. We are yet to cover that bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And it's really nice to see the faces of all of the people who are building the stoves and like learning in your laboratory. So I think that really shows the capacity building happening at the moment. So thank you for sharing that, and also for explaining like this work that's underway to implement Ghana's new regulations. And I think that the ISO standards are also really relevant in this context, and other country representatives on the phone would probably be very interested in the work that you're doing. I would, without further ado, like to turn over to our last speaker, Methkosa Sibia. He is from the Nilo Arts Network in Eswatini and working on a very creative approach to connecting with local communities to scale up electric cooking. So without further ado, Methkosa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm from Eswatini. Just a short background. This is a very small country in Southern Africa with a population of just over 1.2 million. And it's a third world country with an unemployment rate of 36%. And also poverty levels are at 59%, people living below the poverty line. This situation, therefore, causes a lot of the people, especially in the rural areas, to use biomass for cooking. But as a signatory, Eswatini, to the Paris Agreement, our NDC aims at curbing emissions from the energy sector to contribute to the global goal. And then promotion of cleaner cooking alternatives is critical in reducing emissions from household energy or from that sector. Now, the project's mandate. This is a pretty new project. It started in August and it's going on until March 2026. But our mandate is to do public awareness and training on the impacts of SLCPs as I've just mentioned, that the country, a large portion, about 42%, is dependent on biomass cooking. So we we took the strategy that we are going to use arts. And Chilo and Chilo Arts Network is an arts-based organization. So we are going to use arts to reach out to the people in letting them know about the risks of biomass cooking and how it damages the environment. So most of our activities are going to include music, poetry, comedy, drama, and some information leaflets where possible, community engagements, debates, concerts, schools and community areas where biomass cooking is rife. And we will take these messages to strategic occasions happening in the country. To make an example, next week, Wednesday, we actually are staging environmental awards in the country. We're bringing different stakeholders, and some of the poems are going to be recited there that now are giving out information on the risks of using biomass cooking. So far, as I said, this is a very, very young project. We've just done the groundwork that includes a survey on how much of biomass cooking or electric cooking is happening in the country. A report has just come out showing, like I said, big numbers of people still using biomass cooking. And then we have done a bit of review of policies and legislature just to align ourselves towards creating training manuals for government officials and communities to make them more alert of the effects of biomass cooking or the benefits of switching to cleaner cooking energies. So we are yet to begin or to roll out our bigger program, which is now printing and distribution of information leaflets on clean cooking. We have lined up choirs, poets, drama groups to compose scripts and then record their acts so that then we can put them into our radio and TV and social media. So to disseminate the information to the masses. We're going to be staging concerts, road shows, and then training is yet to be done. We're in the process of producing the training materials. Otherwise, the whole cocktail that I've just mentioned, music, poetry, comedy, drama, are yet to begin in this period, beginning January, probably till mid to late 2025. This is basically where we are. Nothing much has been done in the delivery. We are only now at the beginning of composing songs and the poems and everything. But next week we are having our first event where we are going to be delivering these messages to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think I speak for all of us when we say we wish we could be there, that it sounds very like uplifting and a really nice way to communicate and connect with people with this information. And yeah, any like recording that you can do, if you can share it back, like we can also share it with this audience and put it on our website. I think inspiring others to kind of copy your model is also would be really exciting to have this kind of activity happening everywhere, you know. So thank you so much. And I think without like if everyone who was a speaker could turn on their camera, maybe we can have a minute where either people could put their question in the chat, or if we're able to figure out how to unmute people, if people can raise their hand. I'm not sure if you're stuck in the attendee box and cannot communicate, in which case, if you do have a question for one of our colleagues, please put it in the chat.
I have unmuted everybody, so feel free to speak.
Good. Okay, yes.
Sandra, I also just want to say, it looks like the chat is disabled, but the Q&A is functioning, at least from my perspective.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, so go ahead and put a question in the Q&A or the chat, or raise your hand, I think would be even better, or just unmute yourself. Well, to me, I think we saw like such a wide range of activity, really tackling the problem from all different ways. And also just to me, it seemed like everyone who presented would have something that another presenter could take away from their project and sort of bring it into their own project. So I think from that perspective, it was really interesting. Are there any specific questions that anybody has for any of the colleagues? I know someone has a question. Come on. John, John, you didn't put off your camera's off, John.
Yep.
There you are. I'm sure okay, well.
All right, I'll ask you a question. Rob.
Yes, John.
It's wonderful to see Uganda setting such high goals. You talked about what is needed. What seems to be realistic from the Ugandan government to move forward on this?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say like to cut back on ambition, but I think that's necessary. You know, we've all seen, if we've tracked this sector for any amount of time, you know, goals set that are just unachievable. And I don't think that serves anybody. So while I think, you know, ambition is good, you know, it's also worth putting the effort in to think what can we really achieve. So one of the things we did was look at that 5-year transition period and extend it out. So rather than trying to achieve it by 2030, well, that's the SDG goal, but you know, it's not achievable in this context. So stretch it out another 10 years, and that dramatically reduces the annual investment that's needed. So we looked at that analysis, you know, and it cuts it. It's not all linear because population changes. So if you talk about 30% in 2040, it's a different number than 30% in 2030, all those things. But yeah, so extending by 10 years, so to give us a 15-year transition rather than 10. Still really ambitious, right? You look at energy transitions historically, they take decades. So you know, stretching it out by 15 reduces the annual investment, you know, by more than half. That's needed.
Right.
And you know, that is a little more achievable. You know, and even if somebody plopped down $200 million and said, you know, Uganda, here you go, that money, it would be very difficult to absorb that magnitude of investment annually today, right? And then, you know, it would lead to like inefficiencies and potential waste and all of that. So I think being much more measured about, you know, what parts need to be in place to, you know, to get 500,000 households to adopt LPG when currently the number is a quarter of that, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's all the things, distribution, retail, you know, all those things that you need to move products to people.
Right.
Thank you, Rob. And yeah, just like getting these kind of mini milestones, even in our own personal lives, I'm sure we can imagine it's hard to, you know, it's good to have a vision, but like, you know, you have to have these stepping stones, and it sort of works in this context as well. Vincent Kitio, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Vincent Kitsio, working at the Urban Energy Unit at the UN Habitat. I just want to congratulate all of you for the wonderful presentation. My question, having worked on this subject for quite some time, my question is to you all, is why is it that the government has not really taken this issue as a high priority. We heard the intervention from Irina talking about the big numbers. 85% of those 2.1 billion people that are still using this inefficient stove are in sub-Saharan Africa. Why is it that the government is not allocating funding to promote it? Because all the time there are other grant money to use for dissemination, and even sometimes it is a voluntary process. When we know that there are a lot of people dying from using this stove with a lot of indoor air pollution. I just wanted to congratulate the gentleman from Eswatini, because basically it's mean that they are moving towards the right direction, and also of course the presentation from Uganda where we talk about policy. Why is it that we are not seeing money, budget allocation from the Ministry of Energy and also the Ministry of Health? Because those two ministries are really the one that need to promote this so that we start seeing some changing on the ground, beside even fighting poverty, climate change. So that's my question. Thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Vincent. And I think please, colleagues, respond to what you think. Maybe we just go around. We can start with you, Rob.
Yeah, that's a that's a huge question. I mean, I don't think that we're not seeing it. Uganda is putting in money, but it's a tiny fraction of the overall money that's required to achieve this massive transition, right? So, that's where I think the international community has to step up. And while carbon markets are one potential solution, they're a risky solution, and they shouldn't be the only solution. And Vincent mentioned the notion of health. That's been a really hard sell. Health ministries are a little bit, they're included in some of this, and I can't make a blanket statement about all countries, but in many places that I've worked, they're not as closely tied in as they should be, given the magnitude of the health impact that's associated with this problem. So I think leveraging health is critical.
Thank you, Rob. And maybe over to our colleagues in Mexico, Saul and Anna and Cici. What do you think?
It's interesting because part of the answer, like the question that Vincent made, is our hypothesis. Because, for example, in Mexico, we have this experience that at some point a lot of stuffs were submitted in a lot of parts of the territory, and most of them, after 3-5 years, those stuff were abandoned, and they were converted to I don't know, to other things without considering the investments related to those. So perhaps it's not the exactly way to approach to the community and to suggest how to solve this issue, but also if you don't consider the context and the social, let's say, considerations on the ground. So perhaps this is part of the answer. It's a more complex issue, but part of our experience. But Ceci, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the question also. Yeah, adding to what Saul said, we were trying to, through a bottom-up approach, we were trying to evidence and underline the perspectives and the needs for the users, especially the women's, so we can design better programs, right? Not only assistance programs that we are going to give them some stuff that they're not going to use because the people are, the community were not considered in the design, or the materials are not the correct ones, or they don't know how to use it because they were not trained, or they don't have any parts to be repaired. So we are trying to underline and to highlight those experiences to make an integral and better program, considering also the daily use of the stoves.
Thank you so much. And maybe I think it's a natural segue to Eswatini to hear your deep involvement with the community. What do you think about Eswatini's funding and promotion of this long term?
Wow, it's a very difficult one. I think it's almost the same with every country. Government's priorities are very dynamic here. Let me make an example. It's summer now here, and we are having bad rains. All the roads are broken, like broken. The big roads, freeways, they're broken. So the attention of government is there. Now, when they finish that, in fact, we are just a small voice in the bigger cocktail of events that are happening around that need the small budget. I think in government's mind, they do want to participate in this. They do want to help the people, but unfortunately, the people that we're talking about that are inhaling all these pollutants are not dying in the same way that the roads are breaking or that the health is bad. So then they become the least in the priority of things. I can predict that even after this project is done, we probably have to go around scouting for funding. Okay, already I think from the survey, we are discovering that a lot of people feel electricity expensive here. They will probably rather switch to LPG. But even then, they need a boot. They need somebody to probably give them a canister. Then they can buy a little gas stove or somebody to buy them a gas burner. So to me, it looks like we are again faced with the challenge of going to look for funding to help the people start off, because once they start off, then they'll get accustomed to using. I know since I was a child, the next better option from biomass was LPG. So I can imagine that most of these people, if they do migrate, they'll probably migrate to LPG. And I don't see government coming up with a solution today or tomorrow. I don't know.
But it's really important that your role is even more critical, important to keep this going and keep moving in the right direction. So thank you. I think that it's a really important. And last but not least, I want to hear from you, Gloria, in Ghana, like what you think that Ghana has prioritized and how you think that this kind of can move forward.
Yeah, I think that for Ghana, the government is actually making the effort to address this problem, because we used to have about 85% of the population using biomass, but currently we have about 74% using biomass. So there has been some effort to try to address the problem. So currently the regulations on the improved biomass cook stove is supposed to phase out all those polluting stoves and try to get clean cooking stoves for the citizens to use. Because all these ones are tied to nationally determined contributions, cook stove is a major part of the contributions that the government has determined so that it would reduce its emissions. It's the same for the National Energy Transition Plan. The plan and the investment that is needed is actually huge, but I think the government has made an effort. So in 2025, the regulations are coming into force. So any cook stove that do not meet the regulations will not be allowed on the market, so that people would know exactly what is on the market, what they are using, and it will be star rated. So if you want a stove that is doing 5 stars or 4 stars, it means that that one is more efficient than something that is doing 1 star, to get the citizenry informed so that they can make an informed decision when purchasing some of these stoves. Again, I think cultural and traditional attitude towards some of these fuels and stoves doesn't help much. It's very difficult trying to transition some of the citizens from using the biomass to using very clean like LPG or electricity because of some cooking habits. So all these things needs awareness creation, and government needs to put in a lot of effort to be able to get the citizenry to change their mindset and know that it is something that is not good for their health. Scarcely do they connect their health problems with the cooking that they are doing. But then if they are aware that what they are cooking with harms their health, it would be very good for them to change. But currently, scarcely do they connect. So if they're able to make that connection, then it will be easier to transition them to cleaner cooking technologies. But I think the government is doing what it can. It is left with the international community to also come in and help so that we can all achieve the SDGs that we are hoping to achieve.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And just also wanted to recognize the Clean Cooking Alliance and my colleague Alyssa Derby, who's I see on the attendee list, for also all the work that has been going on for the last decade in Ghana, together with different ministries in the Ghanaian government, and also the leadership of the Health Ministry, the Environment Ministry, and the leadership in the Climate and Clean Air Coalition from Ghana over the really more than a decade. And so it's really exciting to see and have such a positive final note from you, Gloria. And I think the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is working with the African Union Commission and the and other actors in Africa to develop this Africa Clean Air program, of which Ghana will be a leader. And so I think we can all continue to learn from each other and be inspired that, with your STAR program on your stoves, like thinking back to the development of standards and all of the labels in Ghana many years ago, and like how it comes to fruition. Like, we should all be inspired that everything we heard today is going to be in a different place in 5 years, and probably much, much further down the line, more far than we could imagine today. So thank you all for staying an extra 10 minutes. I think, again, each of these should be its own hour-long webinar. So as they progress and there's the results start coming in, we will have longer meetings for these. But thank you all. Thank you, Vincent, for your excellent summary question at the end, and for everybody to have a quick, thoughtful reply. And we'll be posting this on our website. Please do quote the Secretary General in your work. And also thank you to Caroline from IRENA for the excellent opening, and also for her expert insight document that's online that I shared before. So I hope you all have a good day. Thank you to all of the speakers. It's really, let's keep going together. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Well,
Bye.